Woven into the foundation, the West and America's undeniable Islamic history. Chew on this. People in the West love to push this idea that Islam is some foreign, alien thing that never had any business touching American soil or Western thought. You hear it constantly in political commentary and talk radio. It sounds confident, sure, but it completely falls apart the second you actually read real history instead of partisan talking points. Every single point here is documented fact. It's backed by primary sources, court records, national archives, and centuries of material evidence. You can lie to yourself all day long about where Western civilization came from, but time and documentation bear witness. The reality is that Europe didn't just wake up one day in the Renaissance fully formed. The foundations of modern medicine, optics, algebra, physiology, and civic law were heavily preserved, expanded, and transmitted directly through the Islamic world during the Golden Age. While Europe was stumbling through its darkest stretches, scholars in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba were translating Aristotle, mapping blood flow, figuring out surgical procedures, and establishing institutional libraries. That knowledge migrated straight into European universities. Figures like Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna, and Ibn Rushd, better known as Averroes, weren't footnotes. Their textbooks were mandatory reading across European medical and philosophy faculties for centuries. The intellectual bedrock of the West was built on those shoulders. When you look at the Atlantic crossings, the presence starts long before the standard textbook timeline. In 1311, nearly 2 centuries before Columbus set sail, Mansa Abu Bakr II of the Mali Empire abdicated his throne to launch a massive fleet of vessels westward into the Atlantic, utilizing the natural Canary and North Equatorial currents that lead directly to the Americas, an account documented directly in Cairo by 14th century historian Shihab al-Din al-Umari. Centuries later, when Spanish expeditions set out to explore the American mainland, they relied on black Moorish navigators and guides who carried the maritime and geographical knowledge of Al-Andalus. Primary chronicles record Estevanico, a Moroccan Moor who survived the 1528 Narvaez expedition. He served as the lead scout, linguist, and explorer who crossed Texas and mapped vast stretches of what is now Arizona and New Mexico decades before English settlers set foot on Jamestown. Islam wasn't imported yesterday on a jetliner. It arrived through early seafaring, and it arrived chained in the bellies of slave ships. Up to 20 to 30% of the African men and women sold and brought to the American colonies were practicing Muslims. Scholars like Bilali Muhammad, Omar ibn Said, and Ayuba Suleiman Diallo were writing Arabic manuscripts, keeping ledgers, and maintaining their prayers right here on American soil before most modern American institutions even existed. Their original manuscripts sit right now in university archives and the Library of Congress. Look at early American political philosophy, too. The founders weren't naive about the world. Thomas Jefferson explicitly bought an English translation of the Quran in 1765 while studying law at the College of William and Mary. He wanted to understand the breadth of legal traditions across the globe. That same Quran became part of the Library of Congress, and it was used centuries later by American lawmakers taking their oath of office. Then there is the direct architectural and legal recognition right in the nation's capital. Walk into the United States Supreme Court building. Look up at the south wall frieze inside the courtroom itself, sculpted by Adolph A. Weinman in the 1930s. There stands Prophet Muhammad carved in stone alongside Hammurabi, Moses, Solon, and Justinian. He is holding the Quran and a sword, placed deliberately in the marble among the 18 greatest lawgivers of history. The Supreme Court didn't put that there as a political stunt or a modern nod to diversity. Official court documentation explicitly states they recognize the historical truth that Islamic jurisprudence helped shape the lineage of global legal concepts, equity, and civic order. Go across the street to the Library of Congress, inside the Thomas Jefferson Building. Look up into the colossal dome of the main reading room. Painted directly into the collar of the dome are 12 figures representing the major civilizations that contributed to the evolution of Western civilization. One of those central figures represents Islam, specifically honoring its historic contributions to physics, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy. Early American leadership knew these ties. When the young United States needed international recognition, Morocco, an Islamic nation, was the very first foreign country to formally recognize American independence in 1777. The Treaty of Peace and Friendship, signed between the U.S. and Morocco in 1786, remains the longest unbroken treaty relationship in American history, verified by the National Archives. Even the everyday map of the United States tells the story. Look at the towns across the American Midwest. El Kader, Iowa, was named in the 1840s by American frontier founders after Abd al-Qadir, the Algerian scholar and military leader famous for his principled defense of human rights and his resistance against French colonial invasion. American settlers respected his character so much they put his name on their own town. Then, look at the physical infrastructure of early American defense. On the coast of Georgia, Fort Frederica was fortified by enslaved laborers, including Bilali Muhammad, who managed plantations on Sapelo Island and wrote a 13-page Arabic treatise on Islamic law and ritual worship, the Bilali document, while living under the brutal system of chattel slavery. American military history has its own Islamic threads. During the 19th century, the U.S. Army's Camel Corps experiment in the American Southwest was led by a man named Philip Tedrow, commonly known as Hi Jolly, a Syrian-born Muslim whose navigational skill helped map the arid routes of the American West. His tomb stands today as an official historical landmark in Quartzsite, Arizona, and the cultural mark across American music and arts is unmistakable. Musicologists and ethnomusicologists have long documented how the rhythmic traditions, the vocal cadences of early field hollers, and the roots of the American blues trace directly back through the spiritual traditions and West African vocal styles of Muslim slaves. You can pretend these connections don't exist because it makes modern political rhetoric easier to digest. But stone carvings, treaties, town names, expedition logs, and archival documents don't disappear just because people decide not to read them. Islam didn't arrive outside the gates of Western civilization or American history. It was woven into the foundational legal, intellectual, and physical framework from the start. All of this is documented, verified history, solid facts that stand on their own. Knowledge is king.